the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
I'm the Chief Resident Engineer and Project Supervisor of the Second Niger Bridge Project. The Second Niger Bridge Project is a project that has been conceived for a very long time, but it has finally come to life during this present administration. This project has a lot of socio-economic benefits, and it has impacted positively on the lives of the host communities, both in Anambra State and Delta State. The people are very happy. The host communities, they partnered with us because apart from the social benefits, indigenes are also employed on this project. We can see how their lives are being improved.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
We should understand that the well-being and the security of this country is the paramount to any government. Prior to now, we are doing more of defensive activities to protect our bases and fight the war when we are challenged or when an objective is attacked. But right now, what we do is to carry the battle into areas where the banditries or the Boko Harams or whatever, the Nigerian
adopt an open tolling policy as distinct from a closed tolling policy.
Executive Council approves federal roads and bridges tolling policy.
The situation of our young artisans who cannot use their tools because of frequent power outages in their districts.
ECOWAS Parliament engages stakeholders on regional energy capacity.
Shell Petroleum bows to court order on 45.9 billion naira compensation to Ogoni people.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is the red alert on climate change.
According to Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, reports verdict on climate change. Humans have caused unprecedented and irreversible change to climate. Scientists warn that climate crisis unequivocally is caused by human activities. And Nadabo, I think that is absolutely correct there.
Yeah, the report's verdict exposes really the failure to act on the climate crisis. The repeatedly ignored warnings of scientists over past decades have now become reality. Humanity, though, through its actions or inactions, has unequivocally overheated the planet. In fact, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has described the IPCC report as a code red for humanity. Jummai?
This is a serious warning. Watching what is happening around the world on CNN, it is quite serious, and nowhere on earth is escaping rising temperatures, worse flood, hotter wildfires, or more sudden droughts. In fact, the future seems worse if actions get towards reducing or halting green gas and carbon dioxide emission into the atmosphere is not checked.
And this is the reality, staring the world in the face. The IPCC report describes these human activities as climate crimes and the world can avoid the harshest effects of these climate crimes, but only just immediate repentance rather for the delays that have brought the world to the brink is required in the form of immediate and deep emissions cut.
And now in this part of the world, Africa and Nigeria to be specific, it is especially clear that there is no time for delay and no room for excuses in managing emissions from fossil fuels and coal. Every decision, investment and target by government at all levels needs to have the climate change issue at its core.
And I agree truly and totally completely, Jumai, by strengthening the scientific evidence between human emissions and extreme weather, the IPCC has provided new powerful means to hold fossil fuel industry and governments directly responsible for the climate emergency. By this, hopefully, the climate change phenomena will get the attention it deserves.
And of course, Nigeria ranked 17th in the world as biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in 2015 and second highest in Africa after South Africa. Climate change is indeed having a large impact on Nigeria with sharp increase in extreme heat and flood of recent actually, Nadabo.
Yeah, truly, the heat can be, unbearable when the season comes. Meanwhile, the government has pledged to reduce its greenhouse gas emission by 20% by 2030 when, compared to business as usual levels. The pledge will rise to 45% on the condition of international support.
And the national policy on climate change in Nigeria is a strategic policy response to climate change that aims to foster low carbon, high growth economic development path and build a climate resilient society through attainment of set targets. We will be looking at the policy response in Nigeria in the face of the recent code red alert on climate change by the United Nations.
And how aware are Nigerians on the imminent dangers of climate change? Can the damage already done to the planet be reversed? And these and many other issues are what we will be tackling today on Good Morning Nigeria. On that note, I welcome you to the program, and I am Yusuf Nadab Usman.
And I am Juma Yusuf, thanking you for joining us. We are live on the network service of the NTA. We have our complimentary segments coming up. But before then, let's take the news highlights with Dennis Adeguloye. Good morning, Dennis. It's good to see you.
Yep, good to see you too, Jume, and good morning to you and good morning, Nadabu. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. The federal road users may have to pay a token for the maintenance of highways and building of roads as the Federal Executive Council has approved federal roads and bridging tolling policy. This is just as the council ratified an anticipatory approval on submission of the final nationally determined contribution as part of commitments to the 2016 Paris Agreement.
We will adopt an open tolling policy as distinct from a closed tolling policy. The difference is that on the open tolling policy, which is what we were used to before, you pay toll at a barrier over a fixed or predetermined distance. The closed toll systems means that you will pay tolls over the distance you travel and the size of your vehicle. We haven't operated that before, so we are going back to what we know. We also approve that consultations must be done, willingness to pay surveys must be done before specific routes are tolled.
Meanwhile, the federal government says it will review upwards the cost of completing the second Niger Bridge. Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, who revealed this when he inspected the Anambra end of the project, gave assurance that the bridge will be completed and inaugurated by 2022.
We are committed to doing as much as we can to quickly complete it. One major bridge has been completed. Hopefully by next year, if you come here, I'm sure most of what needs to be done on the Opobo crossing would have been completed. And all the cost that is attributed to delays moving from Bodo to Boni is now going to disappear.
Data from the ECOWAS Commission indicates that West Africa has a combined pool of 25,000 megawatts of hydropower potential, yet only 52% of its people have access to power. At the delocalized meeting of the Joint Committee in Côte d'Ivoire, the ECOWAS Parliament is engaging stakeholders on how to translate the region's energy potentials into power. An end appears to be in sight over the disagreements between Nigeria and Twitter management. Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says though the report of the technical committee set up on this disagreement has not sent in its report, the outcome of engagements suggests that there is light at the end of the tunnel, with grey areas to be ironed out in a matter of weeks.
For an amicable solution is very much in sight. We quite appreciate the anxiety of Nigerians who have been worried that 2 months after the suspension, we have not been able to finalize talks. But I just want to assure you that we have made tremendous progress.
And on politics, the All Progressives Congress has inaugurated wards appeals committees for the party's just concluded ward congresses held across the country. The Governor May Malabuni-led Caretaker and Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee says it will continue to uphold the party's rules in its rebuilding efforts.
This party is for all Nigerians. Therefore, we must show not only by words, but by concrete actions that there is no attempt to exclude or sideline anyone in the course of this exercise.
The committee set up by the federal government to resolve the dispute between the Kaduna State government and the Nigeria Labour Congress has submitted its report with recommendations that those dismissed for participating in the industrial action be reinstated and paid full benefits. Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, says government will study the documents with a view to ensuring that there is industrial peace between all parties.
Government councils, the State Basic Education Board, the Primary Health Care Board, and all those not paid should be paid their appropriate benefits.
If you go to a hospital and see somebody who is posing as a nurse and his certification is not that of a nurse, you should go. If there are people who have disciplinary matters on their head and they have been found guilty, maybe for fraud, misappropriation of government funds, you have a right.
A large number of people have been called back based on certain criteria, and so it's not question to get them back. Some of them have probably been asked to come back based on certain criteria, which I think is in the report.
The report we are submitting is an interim report. So till next week, after we conclude everything, before we can give you the final report and what is inside.
Now it is justice at last for the Ogoni people of River State at the Federal High Court in Abuja, where multinational oil company Shell Petroleum has agreed to pay the sum of 45.9 billion naira to the people for the losses they suffered during oil spills that ravaged their communities. The monetary compensation ordered by the Federal High Courts 10 years ago will be paid to the Ogonis through their council. The oil company, through its council, Eham Ejelamo, announced the decision to pay up the money while addressing Justice Ahmed Ramat Mohammed of the Federal High Court, Abuja. The council sought order of Justice Mohammed to permit payment of the debt through the chief registrar of the court in a bank account to be opened for the purpose. The final decision to pay up the money was endorsed by Justice Ahmed Ramat Mohammed of the Federal High Court, Abuja. The amount was awarded in favor of the Ogoni people by Justice Ibrahim Buba of the Lagos Division of the Federal High Court on June 14th, 2010. Meanwhile, Kano Command of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons has successfully rescued 80 victims of human trafficking along the Katsina-Niger Republic border. The Zonal Commander, Abdullahi Babale, reiterated the resolution of the agency to intensify end-to-end investigation and prosecution of traffickers across the country.
We're not even happy. We passed through a lot.
We're not going to do it again. After when they free me now, I'm going back to my country.
Like, we suffered a lot. They were just beating us. If we just talk, started flogging us.
Our DG is passionate about seeing that this menace of human trafficking and migrant smuggling come to an end.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has announced 790 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria within the last 24 hours. The breakdown of the new cases from 12 states and the FCT indicates that Lagos tops the daily figures with 574 new cases, followed by Rivers recording 83. Ondo records 38, Ogun 31, Oyo 23, and Delta 10. The FCT records 9 new cases, Ekiti 7, Edo 6, Osun 4, 2 both in Anambra and Bayelsa, while Plateau records a single case. Nigeria has a total number of confirmed cases standing at 179,908, while 166,203 have been successfully treated and discharged. The death toll now stands at 2,195. That concludes the news for now. Do stay with us. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Jume and Nadabu after this break. Good morning.
Admission forms into NTA Television College JOS 2021-2022 2-year National Innovation Diploma Program are on sale from 9th of August to 29th of October 2021. Candidates who wish to apply for admission must have 5 O-level credits in relevant subjects including English language and mathematics. The courses available for application include film and television production, broadcast journalism, and television engineering technology. The admission forms can be obtained at NTA Television College or any NTA station nationwide at the cost of 7,500 naira only. Payment for the form is through remitter platform only in favor of NTA Television College. For more inquiries, please call 0803 079 5335 or 0806 980 9807. Management Announcer.
You won't go shake your body. Instead, they make it calm down. He the farm say he's happy. You want to grow 6 packs in a day. I beg you not to pass your power. You want to show yourself, oh.
Whatever your size, find it with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now to get the plan that suits you. Airtel, the smartphone network.
I'm the Chief Resident Engineer and Project Supervisor of the Second Niger Bridge Project. The Second Niger Bridge Project is a project that has been conceived for a very long time, but it has finally come to life during this present administration. This project has a lot of socio-economic benefits, and it has impacted positively on the lives of the host communities, both in Anambra State and Delta State. The people are very happy. The host communities, they partnered with us because apart from the social benefits, indigenes are also employed on this project. We can see how their lives are being improved.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
will look to start the new season with a victory against former rival Patrick Vieira as he leads his London side, Crystal Palace, to Stamford Bridge. This Saturday, it's Chelsea versus Crystal Palace on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
Now, the National President of All Farmers Association of Nigeria, AFAN, Kabir Ibrahim, gives insight into hike in prices of food items. Details on Business News with Comfort Ahmad.
The prices of some key food items, especially grains, have seen continuous increase in price over a period of time due to inflation.
This fish I used to buy for 500 is 800 now, before.
The continuous surges in the prices of bread and cereals, potatoes, yam and other tubers, milk, cheese and eggs, fish, soft drinks, vegetables, oils and fats, and meat, and the reduction in inflation rate, however, pose a question for the experts to unravel.
If you go to the market today to buy some of these things that are just getting into season, they have started coming down somewhat. If you take maize, for instance, about a month ago, probably you bought at 27,000 for the 100 kg. Now it's about 24,000. As we harvest, it will come down. But it doesn't mean that this will stay for a very long time, because we are not able to produce optimally because we cannot access our farms due to insecurity. Since the cost of input is high, certainly the farmer will have to sell to break even at least, or make profit at least. So that's why you have this turbulence in prices. It will come down, but not very much, because even the rains this year, you know, we've had problems, a lot of trepidation on the rains. In Katsina, where I come from, it's only beginning to rain in earnest now. In the south, and southeast, they are having the August break already. Some of them are already harvesting. And since we do not do this activity the year round, it's only between April and September, October, we have a problem. Because from October up to April, and up to the period of the production, we will also be suffering just like we are now. So prices will keep fluctuating like that. It is so bad now that the salaries are not increased correspondingly, and the food prices are high. Therefore, the pinch is felt more.
Many thanks, Comfort, for the business news. Up next is Newspaper Review.
And Bayo Achebe is already in the house here. Welcome, Bayo. Good morning.
Thank you, Yusuf. Good morning. Good morning, Jume.
Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
let's begin with the leadership newspaper.
All right. Okay.
And just below the masthead, we have FG reintroduces 200th 500 naira toll per trip on highways. FG reintroduces 200 naira 500 naira toll per trip on highways. You get all the details on page 4. DSS quizzes ex-Adamawa Governor Bindao. 5 others over death wish for President Muhammadu Buhari. DSS quizzes ex-Adamawa Governor Bindao. 5 others over death wish for PMB. You find that also on page 4. Tension, that's with riders, tension high in Yola over arrest. I warned them against utterances at APC meeting, says former governor. Tension high in Yola over arrest. I warned them against utterances at APC meeting, says former governor. 146 die of cholera in Kebbi. You find that on page 15. DMO debunks report on Nigeria as high debt risk nation. That is on page 28. We are addressing inequalities in Niger Delta, coming from the Minister Apabio, page 6. NNPC shake-up will enhance experts' efficiency. That's coming from experts. That's details on page 28. Federal government will lift Twitter suspension soon. That's attributed to Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed. FG will lift Twitter suspension soon. $1 billion fund. UN sets up task force on food crisis in North. You find the details on page 15. Nadabu.
Okay, thank you, Jumai. Here on the Punch newspaper, we have the following stories. Above the masthead at the top, we have Naira tumbles to 515 as dollar scarcity persists. And details of that on page 19. And below that, we have 3 stories, and these include federal government reintroduces toll plazas, Nigerians to pay 500, 200 naira per trip. 500 naira, 200 naira per trip, details on page 19. On page 8, National Association of Resident Doctors strike, federal government always breaching agreements, alleges NMA. Federal government always breaching agreements, alleges NMA, on page 8. 4,528 Nigerian doctors moved to UK in 6 years, says the council, says the council. And that is going to, the details are going to be found on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. Another story on page 7 is Twitter has agreed to set up Nigeria office in 2022, says federal government. And on page 20, Shell agrees for 5.9 billion naira Ogoni oil spill payment 10 years after judgment. Details on page 20. The main story and the big story here on the Punch newspaper is recalled envoy, diplomat, arrived today, Indonesia defense assault. Details of that on page 2. But the writers are, we shall take action after discussing with the envoy, says the federal government. And then the second writer is Nigerian diplomat, the aggressor, elbowed immigration official, says the ambassador. As we move down the page, FCTA demolishes 2,000 structures, says residents demand exercise. And there are, photos there of that. You get details of that on page 9. And then on page 7 again, hush puppy, 31 northern lawyers volunteer to defend Kerry against FBI. On page 7. On page 9, Kogi Poly expels final year student, drops 217 for poor academic performance. That's on page 9. And then still back on page 7, we find customs van killed 8 in Katsina due to brake failure. On page 7. At the bottom of the page, on the, the Punch newspaper, FG laments as abductors collect extra 24 million naira on Baptist school students. Details of that on page 2. And bandits failed to kidnap Zamfara ex-councillor, abduct wife and son, on page 9. And finally, presidency, George rebukes Tinubu's supporters, recommends checkup. Details of that on page 7. Bayo, any more?
Thank you, Yusuf. Yes, let's start with the issue of the toll gate. The federal government has approved federal rules and bridges tolling policy. This was announced yesterday at the Federal Executive Council. The tolling regulations were developed from extensive consultation with various stakeholders, including transport unions, as well as Transport Employers Association. The tolls to be paid are cars, 200 naira, SUV and private buses, 300 naira, luxury buses and trucks, 500 naira. However, commercial buses are to pay 150 naira only. It is proposed to be an open tolling system, as previously obtained in the country. An open tolling system requires paying a fixed toll only. It is not like the other type where you pay according to distance. So you see that previously, after going on through some long expressway, you have tolling at several points. That is the difference. But this time now, it is just open tolling system. There are about 5,050 kilometers of dual carriageway in the country that will be coming under the toll. Federal carriageway that are single way will not be tolled. However, some bridges are also to be tolled. There's a story read about 2,000 illegal structures being demolished at a suburb of Abuja called Mpape. The chairman of the committee, Ikaru Ata, says that demolition was meant to sanitize Mpape and was done at the behest of residents of that and landlords of the area. Their representatives requested that the FCDA should help eliminate illegal structures along the road obstructing human and vehicular traffic. The demolition exercise eliminated shanties, unapproved structures that were not only illegal but were allegedly providing covers for criminals. Some occupants of the shanties are already lamenting that they now don't have a roof over their head. It will be recalled that recently, criminals distributed leaflets in that same Mpape saying, we are coming and we don't want you to disturb our operation. Keep 100,000 so that when we come, our business will be fast. It's the same Mpape that has now been a cleanup of these shanties. On the other story of prominence is the visit of the Chief of Army Staff when he visited the Deputy Governor of Kaduna State, Hajia Dr. Adiza Balarabe. The Chief of Army Staff said that the Army is now taking the battle against insecurity, kidnapping and banditry to the enclaves and the hideouts of the criminals. He told the Deputy Governor that more troops, especially along the Kaduna, Kachia and Kafancha road are required. The Deputy Governor also demanded troops along Kaduna Birinengwari road as well as the southern Kaduna, especially Zango Kataf area. The Chief of Army Staff emphasized that the areas mentioned are under the plan of the Army. He emphasized that we will reclaim those forests and we will be there every time. We are taking the battle to the places instead of just staying on the road and preventing their happening. Deployment takes a lot of time and logistics, but I assure you, we will be there and reclaim the forest and the criminal spots. At a recent meeting also in the Zango Kataf area between the Atiap, Fulani and Hausa communities, the communities accepted the truth and said, the truth be told, all the communities have their militia. They have agreed to sheath their swords after talks. The Commissioner for Homeland and Security and the Commissioner for Local Government were also in attendance. There's good news for the people of Ogoni land.
Quite some good news.
Shell Petroleum Development Company has agreed to pay compensation for oil spill that were ruled by a Lagos court in June 2010. Counsel to the Shell told the vacation court in Abuja that the Shell Petroleum Development Company has agreed to pay the compensation to the affected communities. The court agreed that the compensation should be paid to the communities through the lawyers. Meanwhile, the Minister for Information has given indication that the micro-block site that was recently suspended or its operations in Nigeria, talks have reached advanced stage and the suspension may soon be lifted. Minister Lai Mohammed said that we are getting close to reaching a full agreement, hopefully in some days or a couple of weeks. The micro-block site also has indicated through a statement through Agence France Presse, said that it recently met with Nigeria government representatives to discuss how to resolve the matter. It says, our aim is to chart a path forward to the restoration of services for everyone in Nigeria. There is sad news coming from Lagos. Mohammed Faweyimi, the son of the late activist lawyer Gani Faweyimi, has died at age of 52. He's reported to have complained of breathing difficulties on Wednesday morning, but he died shortly after being taken to hospital. The Minister of State for Labour, Festus Keyamo, who confirmed and announced the death, said, my brother, friend and son of my late boss, Mohammed Faweyimi, is gone. Mr. Keyamo confirmed that from the daughter, the elder daughter of Mohammed Faweyimi, that is Bashira. He says, in a tribute to Mohammed Faweyimi, he said he was an intellectually alert person despite his mishap. Mohammed Faweyimi was born February 21st, 1969. He in fact attended Federal Government College, Sokoto. He graduated in Business Administration from University of Lagos and had his LLB from Buckingham University. He was called to the bar in 1998. Unfortunately, in 2003, he had a lone accident which confined him to the wheelchair. Some papers are reporting that he died from COVID-19. May his soul rest in peace. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has...
Not even before you get down to that, at least we should also pay tribute to one of our, panelists, guest here, Ona Ekhomu, who died on Monday, I guess.
Monday evening, yes.
Yeah, one security expert who has been part of this, program for quite a while, really. Right. He has been a very, great contributor to issues, especially talking about security on this very program. And he died on Monday too, and that was due to some complications, from COVID in Lagos.
Is it COVID?
Yeah.
Yes, the good news coming from...
It's a great loss, actually, to Nigeria, sadly.
And that is only to point to the fact that really the COVID-19 thing is really ravaging now. It's coming closer and closer and taking more lives, really.
And the numbers keep going up.
It had appeared that we were overcoming COVID, but gradually COVID carries surface. With the advent of Delta, we have to be very, very careful. And that is why the measures that are being put in place must be respected. And we must all return to the non-pharmaceutical measures to ensure that we put the things are big. But meanwhile, the World Health Organization has announced 3 new candidate drugs that are being tested globally, clinically, and to be tried for cure for COVID-19. The drugs are artesunate, imatinib, and infliximab. The trials are to be effective, for effective treatment is to be carried out on hospitalized COVID-19 patients in 52 countries of the world. This is a solidarity program under the auspices of the World Bank, and the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who gave the information, gave indication that this is part of the path of the World Health Organization to look for a cure for COVID-19.
Artesunate sounds like a malaria drug, actually.
Yes. It's one of the, in fact, it's a combination, artesunate combination, which is used for treating malaria.
And
but there's also another
too.
Health alarm. There is a maribug that have been discovered in Guinea, West African coast, that is said to be similar to Ebola, but more devastating and dangerous than Ebola. It means we have to be very careful. For us in Nigeria, Ebola came from Liberia. We have to watch out for this maribug bug.
Okay.
Oh, well, let's keep our guards really and then watch out for all this. Most importantly, let's take the non-pharmaceutical measures seriously, especially against COVID and other elements too. Well, thank you so much, Bayo.
Thank you too.
It's our pleasure. Are you watching Good Morning Nigeria? We shall now take a break. Stay with us.
Compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to discover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Here today, gone tomorrow. 'Cause you volatile like the water, and you promise what you don't know. Sometimes it's right and then it's so wrong. Them go do like say them why. Will promise you the world, but all I worship. Upon all of the open eye, I see no feel what time. Like you will be like that.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. Its great value, it protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
We should understand that the well-being and the security of this country is the paramount to any government. Prior to now, we are doing more of defensive activities to protect our bases and fight the war when we are challenged or when an objective is attacked. But right now, what we do is to carry the battle into areas where the banditries or the Boko Harams or whatever. The Nigerian Army has brought into its platforms the BT tanks, main battle tanks, helicopters, Augusta 135, the MiG helicopters, which can operate even in the night, the Super Tucanos that are about to be launched.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Arise, O Nigerians! Let's applaud the courage of Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo, aka the Aggressor, for his skillful and dogged escape from the bloodthirsty bandits in the forest of Zamfara State. 3 hearty cheers also to all military and security personnel who are tirelessly protecting fellow Nigerians from insurgency and banditry while maintaining peace and order. Nigerians are proud of Abayomi Dairo and all our gallant men and women in uniform for sacrificing so much to keep us safe. We admire your courage and we say thank you. God bless the armed forces. God bless Nigeria. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The Blues will look to start the new season with a victory against former rival Patrick Vieira as he leads his London side, Crystal Palace, to Stamford Bridge. This Saturday, it's Chelsea versus Crystal Palace on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority. This morning we're discussing, red alert on climate change. And to prompt our conversation, here is a background report put together by Joseph Watson.
Increasing wildfire, drought, flooding, and tropical storms in many parts of the world, among other disasters, are fast sending warnings to the world on the negative effect of climate change. The global community is at a threat of extreme heat and rising water levels due to industrialization and deforestation and other man-made chemicals, eating up the ozone layer and exposing the earth to extreme heat from the sun. The United Nations has described the situation as a code red for humanity. Its Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report shows the effect of climate change are being seen in every region of the planet due to greenhouse gas emission from fossil fuel. The Nigerian climate has been irregular over the years, alternating between periods of extreme dry and rainy seasons. These unfavorable conditions are taking heavy toll on the nation's socio-economic life, with farmers and herders scrambling for green land, leading to conflicts, while flooding waters have continued to wash off many farmlands and destroy a lot of property, with millions displaced. Nigeria's policy on climate change aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emission by 20% by 2030, tree planting and reducing industrial waste, especially in the Niger Delta region, are some of the steps taken. The UN is calling on all stakeholders across the globe to team up and implement measures that will reduce global warming for the well-being of humanity. Sure, the effect of climate change is glaring, but how ready are stakeholders? Is the public aware of the dangers and what to do? What should government be doing to curb global warming? These questions and other issues on climate change will be engaging guests on Good Morning Nigeria.
And joining us in the studio to do justice to the topic is Professor John Osonwa, climate change, renewable energy and environmental expert. It's good to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And also joining us is Dr. Ishaya Sunday, senior lecturer with specialization in climate change and water resources, University of Abuja. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigerians.
And joining the program from our Kaduna studio is Dr. Awwal Abdul Salam, Associate Professor of Applied Climatology and Meteorology, Kaduna State University. Glad to have you on the program.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, gentlemen, it seems we have a problem at hand. You know, human-induced climate change is all over the place, bringing about so many changes all over. You know, the atmosphere, the land, the oceans, everywhere has been affected. And there is such a massive, the United Nations having come across all this and saying they have been shouting and alarming, and there's some, you know, serious warnings all over the world in order for governments and people to really take note and see how we can really mitigate this and halt it for a while. Hence, the red alert on climate change. Let me start with you, Professor John Osonwa. What's really happening?
Well, what is happening is for many, many years, we have been sounding the alarm that the climate that we used to have is changing. Essentially, climate change basically means that the climate is changing, and for the most part, for the worse. Now, over the years, the UN has been gathering reports dealing with the connection between human activity and climate change. There was a previous report in 2013, and in that report, there was still some doubt as to the nexus. But this report makes it crystal clear. It is unequivocal now that climate change and human activities are interconnected. As we are pushing for greater industrialization, we're putting out more carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. It is warming up the climate. Currently, we're putting about 30 billion tons of carbon dioxide every year into the atmosphere. We're also looking at the atmospheric concentration of carbon. It has reached crescendo now, over 400 parts per million. So historically, when you have high concentration of carbon in the atmosphere, you're going to have extreme weather events, you're going to have heat waves, you're going to have drought, the things that we're seeing now. So this is the first time in human history that the United Nations International Panel on Climate Change has looked at the issue. Over 14,000 reports submitted, over 200 scientists contributing, 3,000 pages, and said conclusively, this is code red. We need to do something drastic. The situation is intensifying, and we are not doing enough at this point.
Let's establish it very well. When you mention carbon dioxide at the very, ordinary level, I mean, is it just caused by carbon dioxide alone, or are there other causes?
Well, climate change has a myriad of causes, but we're looking at greenhouse gases. You have, of course, carbon dioxide is a major contributor in terms of volume. You have methane gas. Methane, we don't have as much volume, but it is so potent. Previously, we thought it was only about 23 times more potent, but I'm looking at reports this year saying that it could be as much as 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. We have other gases that we're putting into the atmosphere. So, but all these things are coming primarily from burning of fossil fuels, from industrialization that is not being done in a green, sustainable manner, and it is becoming overwhelming in terms of its impact on our climate, in terms of its impact on regional, on coastlines. Some of the islands are almost being submerged by water now because of sea level rise. The Arctic Circle is melting at a very rapid pace. We've lost about half of the volume. Used to be the size of Africa, about 30 million square kilometers. Now it has shrunk to about half its size. And all that water feeds into our primary oceans, the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean. They are getting more volume, and that translates to higher sea level in all our coastlines, including Lagos and the Niger Delta region. So everybody is impacted. Then when you go into the north, because of rising temperatures now, we have more desertification. We are losing 3.5 kilometers of land every year in the frontline northern states now. It is making the ground so aridified that you can't grow crops anymore.
So, okay, thank you for your opening comment there. Let's now join Dr. Ishaya Sunday. Human beings have been playing for climate change in Nigeria, in the world over, and especially here in Nigeria. Let's give us an understanding of what it means. People causing all these problems to our climate, to our environment, do they really understand the impact of the change on our atmosphere?
Generally, when you look at the way Amana people approach the environment, it is glaring that they have little knowledge, or they seem not to even believe of the situation, of the alarming nature of climate change, particularly the developing world. Though most of the problems are caused by the fast-growing economy in the world, like China, Japan, Brazil, where high level of industrialization is emitting carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide maintained into the atmosphere. And the people that are highly affected are not even knowledgeable about all those things. In the developed world, even some, if you remember the issue that surrounded Trump, he never believed on issues that have to do with climate change, and most of his followers just go away with it.
Leading to the withdrawal in 2020?
Yes, 2020, yes.
How did it impact climate change?
Yes, because the withdrawal means that you don't give it attention, you don't believe in it, so your attention is not on it. You just go into industrialization without looking at the implication of the pollutants that come from industrialization. You also go into development without looking at people that will be affected. You don't look at disasters that are related to climate change, like flood, like the waves of fires everywhere now. They don't care about it. So the knowledge people have, as you come into developing countries, the knowledge about climate change, global warming, is weak. Is weak. When you place out questionnaire, you place out instrument to assess people, you realize they have limited knowledge. The less educated you are, the less the tendency for people to get knowledgeable about climate change. Most people, even some refined minds will tell you there is nothing like climate change. We have two schools of thought, the capitalists and the socialists. It remains that way. Some will tell you there is nothing, and some will equally tell you that the future generation have the capacity to take care of their problem. And that is it stands.
I remember reading something, I'm still staying with you, like last month, that Dubai uses a technology to cause rain.
Yes. Yeah, it's a normal thing.
Okay.
You can send inward, you can develop condensation nuclei into the atmosphere, develop it, it can instigate rain. But what that means is that you are robbing some people. You are dragging rain from one area to where it don't supposed to be. You're supposed to have rainfall in Kano, but you are dragging it to Abuja. You are instigating what we call lower cloud, cumulus cloud, that will give you rain. Those are medium of which people use these days to instigate rainfall. There are ways we can curtail all this.
Wouldn't that change the balance of the earth as it is?
Yeah, it changed the balance, like Prof was saying. You see, when you have the melting of the ice over there, up in the polar region, what happens is that the water, the liquid, there we have water. Water could be in different stage, liquid, solid, and gaseous. Over there in the Arctic region, we have it in solid stage. So the warming temperature makes this water in solid state to melt. And where does it come to? It moves down to places, the coastal region. I will talk more of us in Nigeria. It comes to Lagos. It comes to Port Harcourt. Recently, I did some mapping in Port Harcourt. And what I realized that the shore, the water is already moving into the coastline. For those of us that grew up in Lagos, there is a house we call I think the Green House. And we used to trek like 2 kilometers before we reached the beach, the real beach proper. But today, it's just by the roadside. The ocean is there. That should tell you that the ice is melting over the northern pole and is coming towards. It affects places like in the coastal region in Brazil. All the coastal region around Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean have been affected. The islands are also submerged. We are losing virtually all the islands in between North America and South America. We are losing them. Haiti, Dominicans, Jamaica, they are suffering. Seychelles. Even the map of Madagascar is changing because of submersion of that. Maps are changing. Map of Nigeria is changing from the coastal region. We don't want to believe that what is existing.
That's shrinking, is that what you
It's
mean?
shrinking, it's covering, it's moving. So we are changing. Okay. Coastal everything is changing over there.
It's all right.
Are we going to drown in it?
Of course, somehow.
Okay.
We have experienced flooding in Lagos often. But maybe subsequent question may lead us to that.
Well, okay, you said already, and the future generation will take care of the problem according to some other school of thought.
Yes.
The others, the capitalists and the socialists and the rest of them. Let's move on to Kaduna and then meet Dr. Awal Abdulsalam. Awal, let's hear from you, therefore. The IPCC report seems to be, giving the whole world a sort of a negative signal about the climate. And of course, it's calling on each and everybody in the world to really take a position on this and then see how this can be mitigated. And how really damning or how really negative is this report on the, as in relation to public attitude and human activities in relation to, some activities people do? How bad is it, and what really is it saying?
Well, good morning, Nigeria, and thank you for this question. And I will start from the background given by my colleague from the studio. The report this time around is crystal clear, and it carries some like you said, very negative messages, but they are not all negatives. Let me summarize what the main themes of the report or the main highlights. One is, okay, the climate is changing, but now what the report is saying is changing very fast. It does mean the globe is warming, and the more the warming, the more the problems. Number two, what the report is saying is that this warming has reached a stage that some of the problems that we're going to observe, we've already committed the atmosphere. Example is the sea level rise. The sea level rise, even if the entire world decided not to infuse any carbon into the atmosphere, we're going to see melting of the ice in the next 100, 1,000 of years. But the good thing about the report, what the report is saying, if we can limit carbon, most especially carbon dioxide generation and infusion into the atmosphere, in the next 20 to 30 years, we can limit, or we can at least limit the changing climate at least to a certain degree. And the quick win is maybe we're going to have start to see a clean air in our cities. So what the report is saying is, we have a gauge of 1.5 that has been set since during the COP21 meetings. And if we continue as usual, as we are doing, we're going to pass 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in the atmospheric warming. We might even reach 2 degrees. And the result is we're going to see intensification of what we are observing now. Look at what happened in the beginning of this summer, the temperature rise in Canada, in North America and in some part of some countries. The wildfire going on in Greece, in Turkey, in California, and the flooding we've seen in Germany and in China. These are all signs of extreme events. And what the report is saying, if we continue the way we are without limiting our activities, then we are going to see more intensification and more occurrence of this devastating hazard that is going on. And the report is so clear this time around. It has some unique characteristics for the first time. It has a fact sheet for all regions. This is what is going to happen to this region if we continue this way. It has an interactive atlas that you can interact with it and see. And it also has this framework that is saying if we have change in this, this is what is going to affect the socioeconomic activities or the human activities. So the report is negative in such a way. Of course, this is what we've been receiving. This is the 6th report. But what the report is saying, we can do something. And I think that's the main question. How can we do something to stop this activity? I mean, to reduce this gas emission, and at least in the next 2 decades, as the report is saying, we can see some changes in the climate system.
Dr. Awal. Professor Osunwa, the report has a fact sheet, and that's one, good important in his side, and it's giving us, the graphic picture of every region.
Yes.
The devastation, what needs to be done, and the rest of them for every region. What's the outlook for Africa?
Okay. Let me begin with Nigeria.
Go ahead.
Then I'll move on to Africa.
Yeah.
For Nigeria here, there are specific things that we need to do. And these are things we have been harping on for many, many years. The first one is gas flaring in Nigeria. Gas flaring has been illegal for the past 40 years. A court pronounced that gas flaring is illegal for the past 40 years. We're still doing it today. And we are burning billions of cubic feet of gas every single year in Nigeria. That gas flaring, it goes up into the atmosphere. It is contributing to global warming because it contains the very noxious gases that we have talked about. That's one. Two, you look at our power portfolio, our profile, our mix of power generation sources. You will see that we are not really using renewables the way we should. Now, in addition to that, we don't have adequate power for Nigeria at this point. The government is trying, they've moved in the right direction, but it's still not enough given that we have 200 million people. We are an industrializing economy. At any given point, you have about 60 million generators in Nigeria. They are all spewing the same toxic, noxious substances that contribute to climate change. Then you look at our vehicle emissions. In other climes, there is an emission testing regime where every year you come, they test what you're emitting from your tailpipe, your muffler, your exhaust pipe, and measure the amount of pollution you're putting out. If it exceeds a certain amount, they will put a sticker on your car, say, do not drive it. If you drive it and the police sees you, it's illegal. You'll be arrested. So we need to have a comprehensive system. The standard doesn't have to be as stringent as what you will find in America, where I've lived for 30 years, and UK and all this place. But we need to have a standard, at least something, that limits the amount. Then you look at the way we consume energy.
Before we get down to that, what's going to be the outlook of the standard, if you be asked to suggest?
Well, the outlook, you measure the microns, you measure the amount of particulate matter that is coming out of the tailpipe, and then you can set a limit that is not so, you can't have clean exhaust because we're not using hydrogen, but you can have something that is a little bit better than what you have, because now we don't have, you see all these huge trucks spewing a lot of pollution. You can even see the pollution. So that's another thing we need to do. Then we look at our incandescent bulbs. We're using the old bulbs that glows yellow. Those things contribute in Nigeria. With about 200 million bulbs, you're putting out about 100 million pounds of carbon dioxide just from the bulbs every year. Alone from the bulbs. So we need to switch to LED. Then you look at the way we are deforesting our forests. We're not using the forest sustainably. Every year we're cutting down. Already we've lost over 50% of our primary forests, and it's getting worse. So these are some of the areas that this particular government can look at specifically. How do we improve on these areas? The cumulative impact of this is that Nigeria is the biggest contributor to climate change in Africa, without a doubt. When you aggregate all these things, the generator usage, 60 million, 20 million vehicles, spewing fumes, gas flaring, deforestation. So we need to do a lot in that direction. Coming to Africa, which was the main question, Africa needs to understand that that is going to bear the brunt of climate change now for 3 reasons. One, the geographical location of Africa makes it particularly vulnerable to drought, to desertification, to coastal erosion in most cases. Then you look at the way that we live, our livelihoods, our sources of income are tied to agriculture. Over 70% of Africans are involved in agriculture. Then you look at fisheries, you look at forestry, harvesting forest resources, tourism in some cases. All those things are very vulnerable to climate change impacts, unlike some economies that are relying on technology and artificial intelligence. These ones are labor intensive. They involve a lot of interaction with nature, with the earth. So we are vulnerable. Then the third reason Africa is very vulnerable is because of weak governance structures, poverty in most cases, lack of technology, lack of resources to deal with mitigation and adaptation. So there's a lot of work to be done. And this is what I always tell people. Climate change is not some abstract construct that you cannot measure. If you look at the way we're living now, we have weather variability now in Nigeria. People don't know, there's no clear delineation again between rainy season and dry season. So sometimes farmers get confused. You see a little sprinkle of rain, you go out there, you plant, then the heat comes back and the whole thing is wasted. And then the heat increase is also contributing to agricultural losses. In transporting your tomatoes, your perishables, we lose a lot now. We don't have as much water as we used to have. You look at the Lake Chad region, 30 years ago, Lake Chad used to be 25,000 square kilometers. Now it's less than 2,000, over 90% shrinkage. And people are being displaced. You look at headers, they used to have so much arable land and water resources. Now, top of Nigeria and the Sahel region, that whole region has dried up. So it's leading to forced migration, refugeeism, and conflict as people struggle for scant resources now. So this thing is real. You look at the coastal area, I saw a bus for the first time in Lagos, inundated, people sitting on the bus, almost swimming inside their bus. Yeah. That's never happened before. We've seen flooding, but never like that. So this is real.
Indeed, it is real, and a fact, sheet that is sort of scary. Code red sounds like just when COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. Let's look at the agreements of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which states that each country must determine, plan, and regularly report on its contributions. Tell me, Dr. Sunday, is there a specific or uniform emission target for everybody, or every country has its own?
Yes, there is a uniform target, but when you go back to the countries and you look at their performance, some countries violate it, particularly China. They don't even follow up the agreement. They live by their own standard. They raise their own bar. And they try to, as they want to catch up, they want to build up development or industrialization. The tendency for them to maintain that bar is no longer there. And that is one of the key problems of which we have. And measurement, some countries cannot even measure, cannot even assess what they emit, how they emit. The standard cannot really be monitored. Who monitor who monitor what, and how do they monitor it in various countries in the world? The problem is much in the developing countries, where capacity and competence to measure all those things are not there. Though there are facilities, some satellites, you can use that to measure all those things, but records are not properly kept. If you come to countries like, I don't want to say my country, like Nigeria, how do we actually get this record compiled? Much more other countries that are weak in capacity and competence, that their level of technologies are weak. The tendency for us to get these reports, these agreements met, or the required quality of data is not there. So it is actually a major problem in the world. In places like Canada, like United States of America, you can easily get this. But when you come, records are things that are not readily available. You don't get them. So we just work based on mere say, sometimes not based on real research finding records to solve this problem. It has been a major problem so far.
And stakeholders are debating that the effectiveness of the agreement is not being felt. Is that what the world is telling us now?
Yes. If you look at, stakeholders are always debating. But when you debate, according to, if you look at Antonio's argument, it is not all about the debate. It's all about implementing what they have debated upon. How effective? When countries go back, when after the convention, after summit, when you go back, what do we do about implementation? If you come back to Nigeria, who are the people responsible? Who are the people saddled with the responsible of tackling this issue of climate change? You can't bring out, you can't say, this is the particular agency or ministry. You know, so there should be a kind of symbiotic relationship. You know, if you go to National Assembly, there's a Committee on Climate Change. If you go to Ministry of Water Resources, there's a unit on climate change. There should be a kind of a general organization where there will be a continual assessment. Nigeria will meet, assess, then they will report back. You know, then the same thing happened in several countries. You do that, with that you can have a clean sheet of report when you are presenting. And then you can have effective way of solving some of those problems. But without a comprehensive knowledge, you know, you can't solve any problem. But everybody is just doing his own thing everywhere. Some states are doing their own. I just heard of a state governor, I don't want to mention, where he was saying about they are taking buckets, distributing buckets, so that people can store waste and so that area will not get clogged and there will be less flooding. How? We are solving issues with hoe and cutlasses at this modern age.
Sad situation.
So sad.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Isha. Even though the picture you painted is really gloomy, it doesn't seem to look nice to watch. But all the same, it's we're in Nigeria. We've just got to accept the fact as it is. Dr. Awal Abdul Salam, it's all about talking. COP21 came and left, and of course, we now waiting for COP22. In between, we have the IPCC report, and it's all about, you know, talking and suggestions. And as Dr. Isha said, where is the action? What do we really do? Let's come back home and then see. Look at our own environment and look at who we are as Nigerians and, of course, Africans. I believe, you know, this climate change thing cannot really affect a country, no matter alone, that is, no matter how much effort it puts in alone. It's a universal thing, it's a global thing. But countries have to really put in their best in order to see to it that collectively they mitigate the problem. Now, when you look at the situation in Nigeria, what picture do you see of this very attitude and what really can be done, or what should we do in order to get this thing sorted out?
Well, let me start by saying that in Nigeria we have all the frameworks, the policies, the good writings. We signed the agreement, the Paris Agreement, the COP21 Paris Agreement, which we also submitted our intended nationally determined contribution, and which we point 5 key areas that we are going to help the international committee or Committee of Nations in fighting climate change. One, we said we're going to reduce our gas flaring, we're going to have a smart agricultural system in place, we're going to move from individual transportation to public transportation, we're going to increase our forestation project and also reduce deforestation or use sustainable energy in our domestic and industrial activities. These are the 5 key areas that we promised the Committee of Nations that we are going to do well. Well, if we're going to look at these 5 key areas and maybe draw a scorecard for the country, we can say we are not doing well. That's the truth. We are not doing well as a nation. And that's it. And if we come to action, like you say, what do we supposed to do? I like what Dr. Ishaya made mention in the first contribution, that the issue is a lot of people are not even aware about the danger, the risks of climate change. I made mention in one of these programs that, okay, do a box stop in the city of, in the elite city of Abuja or Kaduna or Lagos and ask people about climate change and you'll be shocked. Most people are not aware about the dangers and risks. They might know what climate change literally means, but the danger and risks and the vulnerability we don't know. I always say that we have some simple, things to put in place first. One is the government to be serious, to agree that climate change is a problem. And I think our government has done that. Even at the UNGA, I think the 71st UNGA, our president made mention that we are serious about climate change. But the action is the major problem. And we can do this action, one, by sensitizing our people. I visited a community, a very remote community in Thailand. They are rice farmers, but they are very much aware about the issue of climate change to the extent that they have developed their own adaptation, how to farm rice, even when there is sea level rise, using the bamboo and whatever. What I'm saying, a lot of countries have gone far in charting their adaptation processes or their adaptation ways, how to deal with these changes, which are obvious, which are in place. But in my country, in our country, sincerely speaking, we are not even yet there. Number 2 is to take leverage of what is out there. You see, the funny or the worst story is that the entire African country, which made mention by Professor, that we are vulnerable, but in terms of contribution of the emission is very less, very, very less. But when it comes to impact, most especially the West African countries, the sub-Saharan region is going to be impacted more. One, maybe because of our location. 2, because of our socioeconomic background, poverty and lack of technology and whatever. And that is why most of these culprits, there was a serious negotiation that they are going to produce a fund, $100 billion fund for countries like Nigeria and other countries to access, to use it either for their technology development or for reduction of emission or for sensitization and whatever. Sincerely speaking, we are doing very, very low. A country like Burkina Faso and Nigeria are accessing these green climate funds, but hardly in Nigeria we do that in terms of government or in terms of organization. So when we are saying we are talking about action, I think we really need to do that. We have the structure in place. We have a Department of Climate Change in the Ministry of Environment, which are saddled statutorily with the responsibility of assessing impact and charting way for what we're supposed to do as a nation. Again, it's not only about the government, it's also about the people. We all have to do, put hands on deck to see how we are going to deal with this issue. I always say that we should focus on adaptation more than mitigation and also emission. We emit less, so we are going to mitigate less. So our major problem is to know how to adapt with these changes that are obvious.
Going to stay with you. You know, it's obvious that Nigeria is quick to sign on dotted lines, you know, in any agreement. And when we come back home, it is business as usual. We have a large population practically exploding all over the place. How can we use our population to mitigate or reduce gas emission through education, information, and awareness? In other countries, there are penalties when you break some of these laws, like felling of trees and not planting another one. What is happening in Nigeria that we cannot stand firm on the resolution that we need to look into climate change before it eats us up?
I think the major issue is implementing our policies. Let me give this example. Sequel to this agreement, it's a roadmap or a very beautiful document by, I think, the Nigerian Petroleum Corporation about how to make the propane gas, the domestic cooking gas, available for, and accessible and affordable to all households. But what is happening currently is this gas is even increasing in terms of prices. This is what we are seeing. And I have said it, that we should forget about all this issue of using briquette issue, because we depend solely on fuel wood in our cooking. I always give statistics. Just last year, we have this research that in the city of Kaduna, 86% of households in the metropolitan city of Kaduna are using fuel wood for their domestic source of energy in terms of cooking. Well, you can't stop people from cutting down the tree because they must live, they must eat food, but you have to provide an alternative. This alternative, we are saying the sustainable and affordable alternative is to provide the propane cooking gas, and then now sensitize people that this is the best for your health, this is the best for your environment. But what have we done? I thought after that beautiful document, the implementation will come, and then we'll see more proliferation of using cooking gas, which most people have adopted. Before, there is this, phobia for using cooking gas and fear, but most people have agreed that, okay, we are going to use the cooking gas. But where is the cooking gas? A kg now is about 500, which definitely is not affordable for so many households. So, yes, as a people, 200 people, we all need to contribute, we all need to do something. But as a nation, when we have a policy beautifully written, let's make sure it's been implemented. And example, I will stick on this issue of cooking gas. If we are serious as a nation, as a government, we can make it, because this is not something that we have to import from another country. We have this gas, lying down beneath our feet. Is only to make sure that it's been harnessed, and it's a very, a good way of distribution and a control of the price of it. And then, like I said, based on research, a lot of people now are ready to use the cooking gas. But where is it? How much is it? How affordable is it? So the issue is the government just has to more serious about this issue of climate change.
Thanks, Dr. Awal Abdulsalam. Professor John Osonwa, I just scratched on the surface of Abdulsalam, talking about, the policy direction of the government, and indeed, the people's response to, these issues. People have to eat, he said.
Yes.
And of course, trees have to be cut down because that's traditional, yes, and that's the only readily available, source of, cooking for most people. The gas came in, of course, people have overcome the fear, and they're not ready to get it, but it's nowhere to be found, or that it's there, but it's costly.
Yes.
There's the issue of, the vehicles you mentioned, over 20 million vehicles in Nigeria that could, go a long way and contribute significantly, I must say, in this global warming thing through its exhaust and the rest of them. But still, the government has come up with this alternative fueling system through the gas, which was launched some maybe months ago,
yes,
by the Vice President. And these are all initiatives that are really pointing towards the right direction in trying to mitigate this problem. What would you say all right, further in this regard in trying to get climate change addressed much better in Nigeria by the government and the people?
See, I agree with him that our problem is not in the rules and regulations and laws or the legal structures in place. As an adjunct professor of climate change and environmental policy, I have seen so many laws, so many regulations. NESRA handles the regulations. NESRA has dozens of regulations. I even rewrote one just recently dealing with e-waste and the electronic sector. The laws are wonderful. What is bedeviling us is enforcement, as he said. I always say if you want to have a very effective environmental protection regime, you need the triple E strategy. What do I mean by that? You need enactment, and that subsumes your laws, your regulations, your bylaws, whatever you call it. I call that enactment. Then you need education. That's the awareness creation, subsumes what we are doing here today, reaching out to the communities, translating things into their languages. Then the final one is enforcement. That's the triple E strategy. If you want to have a very robust, very effective, you must be very good at all these three things. We are very good at enactment in Nigeria. I'll give Nigeria A on that one because I've seen it myself.
You'll be part of it.
Thank you. When it comes to education, we're maybe at a C. Because we're not cascading it to the grassroots, or if we are trying to, the message is not sinking in, as my brother pointed out. But the final one is enforcement. We don't have enough political will.
How much are you giving us in enforcement?
Well, I would say it's C minus.
Okay.
So we don't have enough political will in some cases to do what is necessary. Look at the issue of gas flaring that should have been stopped. And then I'll come back to the issue of gas flaring because it ties into what I was saying about the cooking gas. Then you have we are not devoting enough resources. You know, that's always the problem I have sometimes. Our budgeting scatters funds in so many directions. I've always said, why can't we say this is the year of climate change? This is the year of roads. This is the year of railway. This is the year of whatever else we want to have. Yes. So you devote like 80% to that. Then you just will achieve more. But every year, everything is scattered. And you don't get to your really optimal point of achievement. So getting back to what I was saying, with this issue of gas flaring, you see, we are flaring enough gas to provide enough cooking gas. If you just tweak it a little bit, we are burning. Flaring is just burning. It burns off. You don't use it for anything. So if we can harness that gas we are flaring to offer cooking gas to Nigerians at a subsidized rate, everybody will move. It will clean up our environment. Interestingly, if we do that, we can attract funds, carbon credit funding. There's a lot of carbon funding. When you decarbonize your economy, you reduce your emissions, you can get funds for it. The NNPC just got about €1 million for doing some things differently in carbon credit funding. So it's life. Then you look at what the gas can also be used to provide electricity. We are suffering because we don't have enough electricity in Nigeria now. We can use the gas. So this is a situation where you can turn what is a problem into a serious opportunity and benefit. And we need to do things like that. Government is trying, but we need to ramp up enforcement. We need to become more sincere about what we're doing and leave politics out of it.
Talking about the gas, you were going to talk about
gas
flaring, about the price of gas.
Yes.
If it's expensive, how can the common man be able to access it and not go back to the bush to cut down the trees?
That's what I was saying. Government can subsidize it. We're subsidizing petroleum for rich people, for big boys.
For years, isn't it?
Trillions.
So we can do it for the poor.
We can do it for the poor people. We can subsidize gas so that everybody has access. As I said, if we do that, it will actually be a net benefit to Nigeria. First of all, you're going to have improved health because we also have research showing that this wood cooking, it affects women. It leads to all kinds of problems, asthma in children, pneumonia, pregnancy complications because they're inhaling so much smoke within the household. So that's another issue. So if we can harness the gas, it can be subsidized. And that's one of the things governments are doing now. If you want to transition to a green economy, you must be willing to subsidize. And what we're seeing now is if you make the initial investment, within 10 years, you will now achieve a higher GDP than business as usual scenario. So greening is actually a good thing, but you just have to be a little bit patient with yourself. It creates more jobs, creates green jobs, and it also upskills your work base. Another thing we're doing, we have so many young people in Nigeria. Preponderance of our population are the youths, and we can involve them in tree planting, we can involve them in environmental projects, cleaning up our gutters so we don't have flooding, and even building embankments on our coastal regions, which is what we need now. If you want to checkmate the onslaught of the ocean and erosion at the coastal regions, you can build what we call levees, barriers, so that people have warning before the flood comes in. So those are the things we can do. Let's harness. I don't see why youth corps members should not be, as part of their service, because they're already getting paid by government, to plant trees. Plant 100 trees during your full year of service. And the local governments can make land available. These people who are getting 5,000 welfare stipend, let them do something. Give them the seeds, they will plant. And let them own the trees. Whatever you plant, you can harvest. But in the meantime, we're changing the landscape of Nigeria. We're changing the environmental profile. We're getting funds for it. So that's what I think we ought to be doing.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor John Osua. We'll take a break right now. When we return, our conversation on Red Alert on climate change will continue. Don't go away.
A new edition of TV Guide is out exclusively with Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State.
Since assuming office, our rescue administration has pursued the path of peace and reconciliation and restored confidence among people of different ethnic, religious, and political persuasions. Peace is back on the plateau. We are building world-class infrastructure in roads and opening up opportunities for innovation.
The edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from entertainment, economy, sports, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up a copy and keep abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who's a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The Ministry of Works and Housing has the responsibility to help improve the quality and the quantity of the road infrastructure assets, which are the roads and the bridges and the highways. At the moment, we have over 13,000 kilometers of road network under repair, reconstruction, or rehabilitation out of the existing 35,000 kilometers of federal road network. These 13,000 kilometers are comprising about 850 different contracts which the ministry superintends across Nigeria. We are fulfilling the mandate of our ministry to expand the connectivity of Nigeria's states and by extension the towns and villages through road transport.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
The Blues will look to start the new season with a victory against former rival Patrick Vieira as he leads his London side, Crystal Palace, to Stamford Bridge. This Saturday, it's Chelsea versus Crystal Palace on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
Welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. And this morning we're discussing, red alert and on climate change. Let me get started with you on this segment, Dr. Sunday.
Yeah.
The picture hasn't been that very good. Of course, there is much more to experience in the years ahead if actions are not really taken. But nonetheless, we still feel every year there are floods, especially in Nigeria, and it's increasing by the day and by the year. And heat too, as Professor said, you can hardly differentiate now between seasons because in no time it is some rains and later on some heat and the rest of them. But globally, you find tropical cyclones, cyclones and the melting of the ice, as we said, and it looks as if down here among the people, among the public, the education that this thing is real is not there. And if at individual level, people don't seem to really appreciate the situation and act individually before we get to act collectively, there's still a lot to be done. What's your take on this?
Yes, my take is, you see, at individual level, we still have to do a lot. We just carried out a study recently in northern Nigeria, and we got to realize that the major form of dissemination of information is just through the normal radio, transistor radio. So a lot of jingle need to be on air by the agency for orientation in Nigeria. And we just have to understand that climate change has come to be with us. The problem is there. We are committing our commitment, our contribution to climate change is minimal. Yes, like my friend Awa said, the major thing is adaptation. Some of those problems of which we talk about, I don't actually see them as so much problems. We can convert this problem into resources. You see, we have two major rivers. We have River Niger, we have River Benue. You see, there is this rice they call Lake Rice, Lagos KB Rice. We can convert this problem. The water comes from Futajalo Island through River Niger to the confluence town. It comes down from Mambila Plateau down to the confluence. It causes problem there. But because the ocean is already submerged, the water cannot move into it. So it has to remain in Lokoja for a while, causing flooding, destroying farmlands. A lot of rice farm destroyed. Now, the government is complaining that about 70 to 90% of Lake Chad has shrunk down. We have Kashibila Dam. We have Shiroro Dam. What this simply means that we can take this water from Kashibila Dam to Lake Chad. We can take this water also coming from Futajalo Island through River Niger down to Sokoto Rima Basin, where you can use it for irrigation. They also talk about Argungu. Water body is also shrinking. Take the water there. And as you are taking the water there, you drop the water on bad lands. Bad lands are lands that you can hardly use them for anything. But those bad lands where you have rocky terrains, you can use them for grazing reserves, like the Shere Hills in Jos. You understand? Even the so-called, what do you call it again? The Sambisa forest. Take water there. Give the land to, what they call, to the Fulani herdsmen. They can graze there. When you enrich that place, you enrich also the northwestern Nigeria, where you call the Sokoto River Basin. You develop the tendency. You have a lot of water on the surface. You are expanding the lake chart. Fishes will go. People will change back their economy, going back to fishing, going back to irrigation. Now, at that smaller area, water will evaporate. It will come down as rainfall. Plants will grow up. They will have transpiration. They will cultivate other crops. Then from the plants, you have the remnants, what we call the stalks from the plant. You can use them for energy. But those energy, to some extent, are also bad. Recent study we carry out in northern Nigeria also shows that about 70% of childhood disease, age 1 to 5, is caused by indoor pollutants. You understand? So, but with all those things, you will reduce the migration of people from northwest, northeast, into the southern part. Remember also, a local government in Maiduguri is bigger than Bayelsa State. Yes. A local government in the Niger State is bigger than Imo State. So the movement, the migration of people will reduce. Look, most of the crisis in Nigeria is climate-oriented. If you check the Sustainable Development Goals, 1 to 17, all of them, that is why they were so wise, that their target is to tackle poverty, tackle hunger, in the face of climate change, knowing that the only thing that can jeopardize every effort of United Nations is climate change. Take it or leave it. That is just it. And again, it is also be exacerbated by what? By COVID-19. Because it now became a challenge. So the only thing, if you can make water available to the average northerner in Nigeria, an average northerner is not a lazy man. Because he cultivates in Maiduguri, where you have the Sahel, they only cultivate for just 2 months, and that is highly affected. You talk about the flood in that area, you understand it's a flash flood. What causes that? The land has been covered. The pore spaces in the soil has been covered. So water, when it comes, it could not penetrate. So when you cut that soil, just have a meter, it's still dry, because there is no continuous wetting of that. So what people are interested on, what can solve poverty, can solve this problem, is when you begin to make the environment favorable for agriculture, because 70% of Nigerians are engaged in agriculture. So if you want to solve crisis in Nigeria, take care of agriculture. Give water to the northerners. You get it? Make water available. Then to solve most of the issues we are talking about, adaptation. Adaptation is the only way out for Africans. You use, the problem is there, but you adapt into it. You make money out of it. If you cut down the water coming into the southern part, Lagos will be peaceful. There will be no flooding. Like most of the flooding in Lagos State is because of the excess coming from River Niger and Benue. And Lokoja receive it, the confluence, and send it down to the Delta region of Nigeria. But when you tackle it there, as the water is coming, you take them there. I once presented a paper in the Fora, one water day. And I told them I know they will not call me back again. My argument was so simple. I told them, look, we can take this water to Lake Chad. Instead of us crying, let's take the water to Lake Chad. And somebody asked me a question. And he said, so funny, he said, it is a multi-millionaire money sending this water to Lake Chad and taking it to Sokoto River Basin. And I asked him a question. When you are taking crude oil from Niger Delta to Kaduna State, it wasn't expensive. And that stopped it. So if we want to change, we can convert it into... Look, there are places in Kano like Wudil, like in Kebbi. Like the rainfall in Kebbi is increasing. Based on the recent analysis I made, it's increasing. And why? Because of this cultivation of the rice. And from the plant, from the rice, water is going up and coming back. You get it? And again, I carried out a study also in the Kina local government in Kogi State. And I observed that the vegetation is increasing against the backdrop that vegetation is depleting in Nigeria. When I check, I try to understand. I went down to check myself, doing what I call ground truthing. You know what I observed? they are converting their farmlands into cashew plantation. For those people from Kogi State, you agree with me? So if you go to the north, if you take 1 million northerners to Kogi State and let them see how an Igala man will sell his cashew for for thousands of naira, and you're not giving 20 seedlings of cashew and plant in his farm, with his heart, with his life, he will protect that cashew tree. So instead of planting neem trees in the northern part as windbreakers, plant cashew trees and tell them this is important. They sell the cashew. They will tell children to come in the future. They will tell their children this is the benefit of cashew nut. And the children want to plant 1,000. The next children want to plant 1,000. Before you know, we have green in our northern part of Nigeria. Those are ways, sir. I think that will help us.
Indeed, I can see Professor John also was smiling, and enjoying the conversation. Actually, they say hunger, disease, lack of water, and climate change, which is causing all these things, and our huge population, like he has outlined. How can we use it in such a way that we can change the narrative, like other climes are doing?
As I've said before, we have one of the greatest resources any country can have, and that is in our vibrant youth. Instead of using them for political expediency and dumping them, let us make them an integral part of our development. Luckily in Nigeria, most of the other countries in Africa, they don't have a youth corps service. We already have over 1 million youths conscripted. Let us use them to fight climate change. The original intention of the NYSC cannot remain the same after 40 or 50 years. We need to adapt. That's what he's talking about. Adaptation implies using the resources you have in a different way, with different thinking, innovation. We need to deploy them to help us fight climate change. Tree planting, reclamation of land, rechanneling of water systems can be done to a large extent if we mobilize our youths to do that. So that's one way we are going to make a difference. The other way that we need to really look at what we're doing is we need to involve the private sector and individuals more. Even this tree planting exercise I'm talking about, there is no reason why the government cannot set aside 2 or 3 days. We have World Environment Day, we have World Desertification Day, we have Children's Day. All these days can be set aside. And everybody in Nigeria will say, we're going to plant 1 or 2 trees today, all of us, from our president down to 2-year-olds. You give them the seeds. We have all the agricultural research institutes. We can produce seedlings to give to people. Plant in your locality, plant in your local government areas. We have enough land here. So we need to take concrete action. Then another thing I have said, these areas where people are living in flood-prone areas, coastal regions, areas that are not fit for human habitation, we need to move them, because clearly we see that flood has become a recurrent decibel in Nigeria now. We had the major one in 2012. Since then, we've had over 6 or 7 major floods. So that tells you that the norm has changed. So people need to be evacuated along the river banks. We can use that, as he said. That can become a rice basin of sorts. You move people inland, you evacuate them, you adapt, you mitigate. That's what we need to do. We cannot rely on the old technologies and old policies because the world is changing. Yeah. The other thing we need to do, we need to begin to transition away from fossil fuels. The message is very clear. Within the next 20 years, 90% of the vehicles on this planet will be electric. Everybody is transitioning. So, and if you're selling the fuel that is supposed to power the vehicles and they are not buying from you, what happens? The economy crashes. So we need to begin now to transition. And it's very easy for us. There are biofuels we can harvest from our resources here. There are other technologies we can use. We can use micro-hydro. There's even something called micro-hydro now. You don't need a huge expanse of water to have hydropower. So those things will help us a lot. And we need to begin now. We don't want to be caught unawares.
Okay, Prof, thank you so much for that elucidation. Dr. Awal Abdul Salam, You've had the two, guests here talking, and of course, I'm specifically talking about Ishaya Sunday, who provides some great, ambitious solutions here, talking about the utilization of the water resources of Nigeria, the rivers and the dams we have. I don't know if you really agree with that as a suggestion, and we're looking at this as a very huge project. I think we should start looking at the private sector in this regard. How do you think the private sector can come into the mitigation of climate change in relation to what Dr. Ishaya Sunday said, and of course, what Professor Jonas Anwa said?
Well, thank you for adding that dimension into the discussion. The private sector in every economy, big or small, have a lot to do. But in terms of their investment, developing their investment, in terms of maybe corporate, helping their community or the country. Yes, climate change is like a cause, a negative. That's why some activists are calling it climate crisis, but there are a lot of opportunities in it also. Opportunities of investment, opportunities of, expanding the economy. The example made mention a little adjustment by our National Petroleum Corporation and them $1 million of euros. And we can use a lot of simple, activities to earn the carbon credit. So the private sector can invest into these areas of provision of sustainable energy. I know there are a lot of investment coming up, most especially in terms of solar energy, renewable energy, and they can invest also into the issue of reduction of emission and earning the carbon credits. The major question is, after the investment, what are they going to get out of it? We have a lot of challenges in the country. Investment in the issue of mitigating climate change is the same as investment in any sector. The issue of insecurity, the issue of available facilities to facilitate that investment, the issue of certainty in the investment, and the issue of continuity of policy. These are the major challenges I'm sure every investor will look at it into. But it's a very fertile land, very virgin for investment. Like I said, a lot of investment is going into the issue of renewable energy, most especially the solar energy. And I think a lot of people are accepting or adopting the issue of solar energy, despite the fact it's still expensive. So for private investors to feel comfortable to come in and invest into this climate fight with the intent of even making profit out of it, but and at the same time helping the country, there must be a laid down, a very good atmosphere for their investment, like from the government, the issue of changing, maybe just a little bit of change of policies in terms of taxation, in terms of provision of security, in terms of provision of policies and framework that will enable or will empower this investment into sustainability. These are the major issues that the government have to look, and then will attract investors to come in and invest into this issue of climate change. A lot of opportunities there.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Let's come back to this issue on a final note. Let me get your closing comments there. Let's talk about the positive. We've been, painting, a very scary situation out there for everyone. Let's talk about the positives, including job employment for our youths and anybody who wants to key into the initiative, and curbing insecurity if this is implemented, and of course, using renewable energy, and of course, curbing insecurity. What do you think?
Yes, if we take action, a lot could happen. As I said, our GDP within 10 years will be better and cleaner and greener. We have also seen, based on research we've done, that if you invest $1 or 1 naira in cleaning and greening your environment, within a short period of time, you reap about $40 or 40 naira benefit in health benefits, environmental benefits. So it is a good thing for us to embrace sustainability. But as we are seeing, very soon we wouldn't even have the option. That's the message we are passing. We still have the opportunity to do something now, but very soon we are going to have diminished opportunity for action.
Are you saying climate change is irreversible now?
No, I'm saying that we're reaching, remember the red alert? Yes. We've reached the red zone now. Very soon we'll fall off the cliff. So we want to reverse that trend from yellow back to green in the next 20 years. Okay. And the way to do it is to have serious action. Yes, a lot of countries put in their pledges, they want to do stuff, but we need real action. We have the manpower to do it in Nigeria. And in some cases, we have the resources, we have gas to change what we're doing so that we can have a better future for the environment and for our children.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Professor John Osanwa. Professor John Osanwa is a climate change, renewable energy, and environmental expert. We thank you so much for coming on this program this morning.
Thank you.
And Dr. Ishaya Sunday, senior lecturer with specialization in climate change and water resources, University of Abuja. It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Awal Abdul Salam, it's our pleasure being part of us. Abdul Salam is an associate professor of applied climatology and meteorology, Kaduna State University. We thank you so much for appearing on Good Morning Nigeria today. And that's the program for today. We thank you so very much. Good Morning Nigeria returns tomorrow morning again. See you then. I'm Yusuf Nadabo Smith.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. Don't forget to step up, be a star, join NTA in the war against rape and rapists. Do have a wonderful day.